I woke up to a strange feeling, like I wasn't alone. My body tensed before my mind even fully registered where I was. The air in the room felt heavier than usual, and the distant hum of the heater did little to soothe my growing unease. Blinking the sleep from my eyes, I turned toward the door and nearly gasped. Standing at the foot of my bed, half-shadowed by the dim glow of my bedside lamp, was my stepson, Ethan. His 12-year-old frame looked smaller than usual in the oversized t-shirt he wore as pajamas. But it wasn't his presence alone that startled me. It was the way he stood there, still, silent, gripping the edge of his shirt in his small fists. "Ethan's?" My voice was groggy, but filled with concern. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer immediately. His dark eyes flickered toward the door before he finally whispered, "I heard something." I sat up, pushing the covers off my legs. A part of me wanted to assume he had a bad dream. Kids have those all the time, but the way his voice trembled made me pause. "What did you hear?" I asked. His lips pressed together for a moment before he finally admitted, "A voice." Downstairs, the room suddenly felt colder. My husband, Matt, was working an overnight shift, which meant it was just me and Ethan in the house. There shouldn't have been any voices. I inhaled slowly, keeping my voice calm for Ethan's sake. "Are you sure?" He nodded quickly. It woke me up. Goosebumps prickled my arms. I glanced toward the darkened hallway outside my bedroom door, listening intently. Silence. But that didn't mean we were alone. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and checked the security app linked to our cameras. The front yard was empty, the back porch still, the living room showing nothing but the flickering glow of a forgotten nightlight. Everything appeared normal. But then I noticed something that made my pulse jump. The back door was unlocked. I knew for a fact I had locked it before going to bed. A knot formed in my stomach. I turned to Ethan, keeping my voice steady. "Stay here. I'm going to check." His eyes widened in panic, and he grabbed my arm.
"No."
"I don't want to be alone." His fear was real, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to be alone either. I nodded, squeezing his hand. "Okay. Stay behind me." We moved slowly toward the hallway, my bare feet making no sound against the carpet. The house was eerily silent, the kind of silence that made my skin crawl. Every creak of the wooden floor sounded magnified as we approached the staircase leading downstairs. I hesitated at the top, straining to hear anything unusual. A sudden rush of air blew against my skin, like a draft moving through the house. My heart pounded as I reached for the light switch, but Ethan's hand clamped onto mine. "There it is again," he breathed. A faint whisper drifted up from below. My entire body went rigid. I wasn't imagining it. Someone or something was downstairs. I motioned for Ethan to stay close as we descended the steps. My grip tightened around my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency call button. The living room came into view. The furniture was undisturbed, the TV remote still on the coffee table where I had left it. The only movement came from the curtains shifting slightly in the air from the heater. Everything looked normal. But the back door, it was open. Not fully, just slightly ajar, enough for a sliver of darkness to seep into the kitchen. A chill ran through me. Had I left it unlocked?
No.
I was sure I had locked it before bed. I swallowed hard, glancing at Ethan. His small fingers clutched my sleeve tightly. I took a shaky breath and stepped closer, pushing the door shut. The lock clicked into place, but an unease settled deep in my chest. "Maybe it was the wind," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. Ethan didn't look convinced either. His grip on my sleeve hadn't loosened. Then why did I hear a voice? I had no answer. I checked the entire downstairs, every door, every window. Everything was locked now. Nothing was out of place. There was no sign of an intruder. And yet, a lingering sense of wrongness clung to the air, like a presence that had just slipped away before we arrived. Finally, I led Ethan back upstairs. He climbed into bed beside me without protest, still clutching his stuffed animal. He hadn't needed one in years, but tonight, he held onto it as if it were a lifeline. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Maybe it had been his imagination. Maybe he dreamed the voice and woken up confused. Maybe I had forgotten to lock the door after all. And yet, long after Ethan's breathing steadied into sleep, I remained awake, my heart pounding. Because deep down I knew the truth. I had locked that door. And someone had opened it. The next morning, I felt the exhaustion in my bones. I had barely slept, my ears constantly straining for any sound. The house was quiet now, bathed in the soft morning light, but the unease from last night hadn't left me. Ethan was quiet over breakfast, pushing his cereal around in the bowl without really eating. I debated whether to bring it up again, or let it go. But he beat me to it. "Do you think someone was in the house?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated before answering. "I don't know." He nodded slowly, as if he expected that answer. Then, after a pause, he added, "I wasn't dreaming. I really heard it." A shiver ran through me. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "I believe you." His shoulders relaxed slightly, but the worry in his eyes remained. I spent the rest of the day checking the locks, testing the security system, and even calling Matt to tell him what happened. He was skeptical but promised to check the cameras when he got home. That night, I made sure every window and door was locked twice. I left the hallway light on, just in case Ethan needed it. But despite my precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up again. Not because of a noise, not because of a dream, but because I felt it. That same heavy presence, thick in the air. I turned my head slowly, and my blood ran cold. The bedroom door was open, and Ethan was standing there again. But this time, his expression was different. His eyes weren't just scared. They were pleading. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "It's back."